Hi, thanks for joining me. Today I want to tell you guys about the Dreamcast and my experiences with it. This is a system that I think myself and it had good timing. Additionally, I've always had kind of a core group of friends who I am still friends with to this day that all video game. We all liked video games. We all video gamed as kids. Some of us have known each other since we were in grade school. Some of us, met in high school, junior high, and college. So just a lot of fun memories that I have of playing these games with those friends. And just the timing was good where I think we all were just getting out of college or sort of finishing up with that experience and starting up with new jobs. We were just kind of entering the workforce. So, we had some disposable income and we were working for ourselves for some of us maybe not the first time, but you know what I'm saying. And so this group of friends, I can think of offhand, four people around me plus myself, all of whom owned the Dreamcast. So when I looked around me, just from my personal experience, I think history paints a different picture, but for me, the Dreamcast seemed very much, very alive, very popular, and very exciting. We were all really excited about it and having fun with the system. Now, I get the impression that others probably felt the same way too, and it was a little surprising when the rug kind of got pulled out from under everyone, but that's a different video. What I want to talk about are some of the games that I associate with the various friends that I had, and I also just want to play some of these games to just re-experience them. And I'll put the footage here up so that you guys can check some of that out. I guess to start with, I'm gonna call my friends by initials, or basically just first name initial, because I haven't gotten permission from everybody to use their names. It's probably silly, but my friends I'm gonna talk about are N, S, A, and M. Okay, plus myself, Matt. So, my friend N, he's been a competitive gamer. I think he really got into multiplayer. I think he used to play competitively video games with his brothers and stuff. I remember going over to his house and playing like Road Rash and stuff like that, which we could play against each other. And I definitely remember him playing some single player games and enjoying them a lot. I think Alundra on the PlayStation was one of them. I remember he had a 3DO of all things for a little while. He had a Saturn for a while and then played like Albert Odyssey and stuff. I mean, he definitely enjoyed single player RPG experiences and stuff like that. And he may, still some, but as the years have gone on, I think of him more as a competitive multiplayer online gamer. He really gets into that social aspect of it. So, at the time, the games that he introduced me to were things like Power Stone. Was very excited about. I know, I think my first experiences on the Dreamcast with some of the great 2D, versus fighting games that are on it were through this friend. I distinctly remember him bringing JoJo's Bizarre Adventure over and playing that for the first time, and it just seems so weird. I mean, it has bizarre in the title, so you figure, you're like, okay, you're primed for this to be weird. And I think we understood at the time that it was based on a Japanese comic of some sort, but even now, I've never really watched or read any of JoJo's, and that may be a crying shame that I need to rectify. But just playing the game, I remember, gosh, there was like a little dog or something you could play, and just all kinds of stuff. I remember playing this with my friends. It was a pretty cool 2D fighter. And we weren't super hardcore. I mean, like I said, this one friend in particular probably was the best of all of us. I mean, we usually just got used to him kicking our butts around, but we always had a good time. And through him, I'm almost positive that my copy of Fatal Fury, Mark of the Wolves, I was able to purchase directly off of him. he's definitely one of those people that I remember playing. Um, I'm gonna say it's probably Capcom versus SNK, um, but it may have been some of the King of Fighters like Dream Match or something like that. I distinctly remember a King of Fighters game, and he was really into like Capcom versus games. I'd be surprised if he didn't have like Marvel versus Capcom and that sort of thing on the system. But we definitely had a lot of fun playing those 3D and 2D fighters back then, and the Dreamcast was a great system for it. He really enjoyed his Dreamcast. He had sort of the Berserk Guts Rage. I distinctly remember checking that out. I think for the first time over at his house, and it's it's a really interesting game. I think I always held it in high regard, and I remember being impressed by how cinematic it felt. And I've been thinking back, and I'm like, what about that game was so cinematic? And I think it was that it was it used in-game cutscenes and not pre-rendered cutscenes. Definitely you had that same sort of cinematic experience on the PlayStation 1 with stuff like Final Fantasy VII and the Resident Evil games and a lot of stuff like that had cutscenes, but they were all pre-rendered. It was really a time of pre-rendered cutscenes. And with the Dreamcast, the graphics didn't look as good, but you could start to get away with in-game cutscenes that really held up. They stood up pretty well. Unfortunately, I would say, since I've been able to play sort of the Berserk since then, I certainly respect the source material that it's based on, and I really like the anime, the TV series, watch the movies and stuff. But as far as the game goes, I don't think it's very good. Yeah, I think it's one of those games where the first half of it really paints it in a very good light, makes it seem really great. And then once you get to the second half, you sort of realize that was the good part of the game. And it's also a short game. If I remember correctly, I think it's got about 6 stages, and each of the stages is probably about an hour long. So, you kind of have 3 good hours and 3 bad hours with it. And the end boss was kind of cheap and hard to beat. So I never did finish that. But yeah, I remember that just a lot playing those games with him. Another one, Project Justice, was one that we all used to play a lot, and a lot of these games really sort of span friends, sort of. I know that several of my friends owned Project Justice, and I don't know what it was about it that we liked so much, or why several of us had it. I mean, it's kind of a unique fighter as far as Capcom Fighters goes. As far as I know, it doesn't include. Well, I guess it doesn't maybe include 1 or 2 characters from Street Fighter. I might be wrong about that. But I mean, I think it's mostly new characters. But I distinctly remember playing a ton of that game. Really enjoyed it. And then, one of my other friends, I was actually rooming with one of the friends, S, at the time, and I remember when he got the Dreamcast. I'm pretty sure I was there, rooming with him, and he went out and he bought a handful of games. And that's another thing with the Dreamcast, is the launch library was so good. Soul Calibur was a launch game for that system, as well as Sonic Adventure, and I remember him having both of those games. And interestingly enough, I never really got into Sonic Adventure all that much. I remember watching him play it. I wasn't really into it. I know I played a little bit of it. I don't know why. I mean, I like Sonic on the Genesis, but maybe it was just an experience I didn't really want to go back to, or I didn't really think it translated well into 3D. But Soul Calibur was so amazing. I remember playing Soul Blade on the PlayStation, and we, and I myself in particular, played the heck out of Soul Calibur. We used to play Taki a lot. She was kind of my go-to character. But I remember I could play a lot of the characters in Soul Calibur pretty well. I mean, I don't want to talk it up too much, because I feel like nowadays you have all kinds of ways to really test your mettle in these kinds of games and play online with people and stuff. I'm sure I'd get annihilated. But against my friends, I used to be pretty good with Siegfried. Anyway, I used to be pretty good with a handful of characters, and you know, that to this day I think is just one of my favorite games on the Dreamcast, and I think really showcased its strengths, especially as a launch title. Um, and I remember, you know, my friend S, you know, we would go out, you know, to video game shops and you know, just pick up cool stuff. I don't really know if, you know, he used to kind of get the games and I would play them, or if occasionally I would get a game and we would play them together. But I mean, we always shared the games, you know, no matter how that panned out. I know he had Jet Grind Radio, which was really cool. I remember playing that, and we played tons and tons of Phantasy Star Online. It was just the right time for that. You know, we were both kind of, you know, tech savvy, and we were excited about a game that you could play online on the home console, and you know, so we were excited to get that hooked up, and got a keyboard for the system and everything. And I had so much fun on that game. Just the memories from that are great. I really loved the way that Phantasy Star Online played out. You were just playing sort of the same 4 levels like over and over again, but you know, there were different difficulties of them, and just so many cool things. You were just grinding for drops, like for rare drops, but it was really laid back. You could just hop into a dungeon by yourself if you were strong enough to just pick away at some of the enemies, and then just leave it open. Other people would hop in, and you know, everyone was just geeky gamers. We'd be talking about what anime we watched, and you know, stuff like that. It was an interesting opportunity just to meet you know, other people, and just converse. I mean, you had to use the keyboard and type. There was no voice chat or anything like that. But so much fun. It was kind of ruined by people duping the rare items. I think that really you know, made it kind of crummy. And there was just some weird things about it too. I remember one of my other friends, we would play together online in Phantasy Star, and so that was my friend A. So my friend S was going to give him some rare items, which I'm sure were dupes that he got from somebody else, but you know, whatever. I mean, they were still rare items that we had, and we were excited about it. So my other friend A was running around dropping like 1 meseta. Because that's actually how you would trade items. You'd have to physically drop them. And it was kind of risky, because, I mean, you'd basically go into an instance with another character if it was somebody you didn't know, and like, you would drop your item you were going to trade, and they'd drop, you know, hopefully the item that they were going to trade, and then you'd just go and pick them up, and you know, any kind of shenanigans could go on. You could drop yours, they could just run and pick yours up quickly and just, you know, warp out or something. But I usually, I think I had all good experiences. But anyway, so my friend A, he's dropping these 1 meseta, and what we didn't realize, he was just fooling around because he was, you know, bored, and that there's a limit to how many items that you can have in, you know, out on the field at one time. So you know, and this was just in like a little like lobby instance. So you know, my friend was putting out like 6 or 7 rare items from my other friend to get, and he was dropping, you know, dozens of meseta, and eventually the rare items started disappearing for each meseta that he put down. So there was a little bad blood there for a little while, but just fun times. He had Record of Lotus War, which I remember checking out. I'm gonna forget who it is that picked this up recently, so I apologize. If I remember, I'll put an annotation. But it, you know, I remember having seen Record of Lotus War back in the day, and being kind of excited. But this, you know, this seems like more of just a Diablo clone in a way. I don't think it, you know, really follows a lot of the story, or is sort of a cinematic or story-based RPG based on Record of Lotus War. But it seems like a cool game. I think my friend S, you know, played more of it than I did. The same with Choo Choo Rocket, except that's a kind of a puzzle game. And I've heard a lot of people say really good stuff about Choo Choo Rocket. I played around with it a little bit, but I just never quite got into it. But my friend really liked it a lot. You know, additionally, I remember playing Illbleed, and I don't know if that's one that he picked up or not, but I just remember I took to it a lot, and I think it's one that I played on my own. You know, maybe when I had my own Dreamcast. Maybe just a little bit after that. But one of my favorite games ever, probably. I still haven't beaten it, which is too bad. I really need to go back and play that. Just tons of games. There were so many games coming out for the system. It's easy to forget in this age of, companies making 2 or 3 big releases a year. It wasn't just the launch lineup of the Dreamcast. I mean, I'd have to look up the numbers, but there were a whole, 10, 12, look for yourself, but there were a bunch of games that came out at launch. But then every, week, pretty much after that, I mean, you had every month, like dozens of games were coming out for the system. I mean, if you think about it, the North American run of the Dreamcast was like 2 years, 2.5 years maybe, and you had around over 250 games come out in that time. So you can do the math, but with 12 months in a year, you're talking that's like 10 games a month coming out for the system, and it was just really fun to just always have. I mean, I don't think we felt flooded with games. I think we were picking and choosing the stuff that really seemed cool. But it was just exciting. Like, we didn't have to have big game libraries. I mean, maybe each of my friends had 10 games or something. But between us all, it was just a lot of really good games we got to play. Speaking of which, my game, my friend A, he was a big Space Channel 5 fan. We played a lot of that. I played that with my friend S too. The same with Dead or Alive 2. That's one of the games I remember playing so much of on the Dreamcast. My friend A, I know, had Crazy Taxi. I remember playing that with him. Sega Rally 2. That was one that actually I think we got a little frustrated with, honestly. But I do have memories of playing that. That was fun. He's also the one that was interested in getting a chipped system, and he would import games. He was interested in importing, I don't know when, I mean, he's the one that imported the PCFX, so that probably got him started. And, around that time the PlayStation was out, and then, the Dreamcast came out after that. I think that acclimated him to the idea of importing. I know he had the Nadesco game for the Dreamcast, because I was able to buy that from him after he got rid of his system. He's the one who had Shangri-La, that Mahjong game that I talk about in one of my Japanese pickups videos, and additionally Puyo Puyon, Puyo Puyo 4 was one that we both got to play back in the day. One of the Japanese Dreamcast games I don't have, that I know that he had, is Twinkle Star Sprites. I remember playing that on the Dreamcast, and just so much good stuff. Another really cool thing with the Dreamcast is you could get, they were just starting with a couple of Bleemcast discs, and back then I don't think that I remember PS1 emulating at a certain point, which probably wasn't too long after this. It may have been during this time, but basically this company, Bleem, produced a couple of discs that you could use to play PlayStation versions of Tekken 3 and Metal Gear Solid, and I think the other one was Gran Turismo 2, on the Dreamcast, and you would essentially get the same benefits that you get today when you play those games, essentially emulated on, stuff like the PlayStation 3, or on, like, emulated on your computer or something like that. Everything, there's smoothing. The textures look a little nicer. The 3D models look a little nicer. And that's because the Dreamcast just had better 3D hardware in it. So you were able to take advantage of that with some PlayStation games, which I always thought was really cool. And of course, they, I think, got sued and shut down before too long. But those Bleemcast discs are still out there. You can get them. You can play Tekken 3 on your Dreamcast, which is a pretty neat thing. And my friend S was an anime fan too, so I remember playing Gundam Side Story 0079 on it. I wasn't a huge fan of this, but it was neat. It was neat to play like a mech style game. I know he actually really liked Armored Core on the PlayStation, so I think that fed into it. He was familiar with the Gundam anime and kind of a fan of that. He's actually a little bit of a mech fan just in general, I'd say. I remember playing Resident Evil Code Veronica with him, and that was a game that it took a long time for me to come around to, but I definitely had fun with it when we played it together, and just so many great memories. I mean, it took me a really long time to process kind of the fact that the Dreamcast like wasn't doing well for some reason here, just because I was surrounded by it so much, and if I took my personal experience into account, it seemed like the Dreamcast was great. I was watching a video recently that I think highlighted a little bit. It sort of brought it home to me. It was one of those, why the Dreamcast failed sort of videos on YouTube, and but what they were mentioning was just the specs of the PS2, and all my friends that were really into the Dreamcast also were excited about getting a PlayStation 2, and I remember they all pretty much upgraded to a PS2, and at that point some of them got rid of their Dreamcasts. That's probably how I got mine. In fact, I know I have my friend's chipped system that he used to import for. So I kind of, I guess, picked up some of the leftovers in that respect, and that's how I got started on my collection. At the time I was less interested in, and probably less able to afford getting the new PlayStation 2 system, and was more interested in just picking up some of the cheap Dreamcast games because I liked the system so much. But the sheer specs on the PS2, when I thought about it, I was like, you couldn't have done games like Final Fantasy 12 on the Dreamcast. You couldn't have done games like Shadow of the Colossus on the Dreamcast. The Dreamcast was a great system, and it had a longer life in Japan. It could have had a longer life in the States, I think, or in North America in general. And I think they pulled the plug kind of early, but whatever the reasons were, and whatever it made sense for them, the system was just not as powerful as those newer systems. And I think just because of that, it was destined to kind of to peter out, I think, in relation. But I'm kind of curious to know if a lot of people didn't get the system, because the PlayStation 2 was coming out, or just weren't interested in the Dreamcast at the time, or it was just, it might have been overlooked by parents or something like that. I don't know, but we were gamers at the time, and just all of us were just super excited to get the Dreamcast right when it came out, and I think the games that were on it were such high quality and were so much fun. Just playing together Dead or Alive 2 and Space Channel 5, and I didn't even talk about Shenmue. That's another one that I can't quite remember which friends are associated with it, because I think a bunch of us played it, and it was groundbreaking. I mean, like I was saying, with the in-game graphics were good enough to sort of pull off that cinematic effect, and in addition to sort of the Berserk, which I think almost does as good a job as Shenmue in sort of its cinematic presentation in a lot of areas. Just the scope of Shenmue and the polish and the overall, I mean, it's just the length of the game and the whole cinematic experience that it gives you. It was like nothing I'd ever played, I think any of us had ever played at the time. So that's another one that multiple of us I know got to play and were just really wowed by. So I have all good memories of that system, and you know, it's just it's one of those chapters of my gaming history that I look back on really fondly. So you know, I hope it was fun to hear me reminisce a little bit about this, and you know, just to check out some of the gameplay and the games that I remember playing. I have a big collection now, obviously a complete North American collection, so I have a lot of games to catch up on, and I don't always spend a lot of time playing my old Dreamcast games. There's a lot of those games I want to revisit or just visit for the first time that I'd never played. So I'm hoping to get back to that here a little bit. But anyway, I just wanted to share my thoughts with you guys today. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you'll join me again for more video game related videos. Thank you for watching.
Ooh. Ah, good.